Good morning, all. Welcome to Embarking Without a Map. It's part of our new webinar series, Seven Secrets of Innovation. Sounds pretty cool. Where we explore some of the biggest surprises from 10 years of innovation management research. I'm Jerry Purcell. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Thought Leadership at Innovation 360 Group. And today I'll be chatting with Luis Calderon, a partner at Innova Salud, Innovation 360 Gold partner based in Mexico. Luis is widely recognized for his work as an innovative and customer-focused leader who builds and leads high-performance teams to achieve outstanding results in different environments, from big pharma to biotech startups. Welcome to the show, Luis. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey Jerry, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and thanks for having me on this webcast. Also to our great audience, thanks for joining and gifting us some time for from your time today. As many of you might be aware, I'm really passionate about healthcare. I'm a very curious leader and for the past 11 years, jointly with the support of friends and great colleagues at Innova Salud, we've been fulfilling our mission of transforming the LATAM healthcare space through evidence-based innovation. And we've been supporting organizations by bridging strategy with their execution goals across LATAM, the US, and EU markets. So it's great to be here with you.
So today, Luis and I are going to talk about some surprising insights from our recent review of 10 years of data, working with our global network and looking at the patterns that many organizations report. Innovation is rarely, what we found actually generally is innovation rarely is about a failure, about effort or creativity. It's about the navigation system. And today we're going to show you the data, the patterns, and the path forward for the first of a series of seven webinars that we'll be holding over this year. And following the session, we'll make a copy of Luis's recent paper available to all of you. There's lots of additional information. So Luis, let's start with so actually one other thing I wanted to do is just lay out the agenda. It's pretty straightforward. What surprised us most, some of the numbers. We're going to talk about scenario planning, which is one of the antidotes to not having a plan. What leading organizations do, and then if there's any Q&A at the end, that'd be great. Please put any questions that you have into the chat through the course of the presentation. If we get a huge number, we'll try to deal with some of them as we go along. Otherwise, we'll leave them to the end and follow up on any that we can't get to if there's a huge number of them. So, Louise, as I said, let's start by casting our minds back pre-Innovation 360, a long, long time ago. Say 16 or 15, excuse me, or 20 years ago. Describe the innovation environment then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a big shift. I mean, from little, if we think about 20 years ago, there's that we really had very linear R&D and frameworks, and today we're migrating to very systemic frameworks. So take a look back at how innovation was largely synonymous with the R&D departments. So you had labs and product development teams and cycles, and so all of a sudden the conversation started shifting, from Clay Christensen's work about disruptive innovation. We started to see that there was a big change in terms of mindsets, and things like Agile and Scrum started emerging. And we started entering the information age where digital era really began surpassing the physical and manufacturing as a driver of growth. So that really changed the way our system started working. And there was really an ecosystem awakening. So people started recognizing that innovation wasn't just about what happened inside our R&D walls. So they were starting to figure out that it was way more about just the product development, and there was other opportunities about customer engagement, customer experience that could actually come into view and value. And not only in that term, but there was a way more interactions between universities, the public research institutions, private firms, the startups in the last 15 years have been amazing. And then a lot of linkage as well with the government. So open innovation started becoming a real discipline in the last couple of years. Now, it's interesting to see this because Magnus, who's part of the panel today as a host, he started looking as a serial entrepreneur. He started looking in at a portfolio of different startups, and he saw that they were getting a lot of mixed results. So he was really determined on uncovering the patterns that separated the top performers from everything else. And that quest actually gave us, 20 years ago, gave us the genesis of Innovation 360. He's today he's a founder and the CEO of Innovation 360. But that work that he did almost 20 years ago became the genesis from what we have today. Eventually, provided the whole structure and capabilities for the InnoSurvey, and we became the world's largest innovation capability database by it.
Innovation 360 has been studying leading thinkers in the innovation domain from as much as 100 years ago plus, and working with our clients around the world, building a knowledge platform that and tools for innovators over the last 10 plus years. One of the things that intrigues me, and one of the things that drove the beginning of this research effort, is that the expectations, actually, the realization that innovation is a much more substantive thing, and the expectations around that has risen globally. And we've seen that in our clients. So organizations now understand that innovation is not optional. It's actually there's a hard word, existential. But understanding and execution are two different things. So this is a truly seminal moment for innovation management around the world, don't you think, Luis?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we're shifting pretty much from, this sort of intuition space to really a science for innovation.
So this past year, the extended Innovation 360 team asked a question. They asked, what have we learned about innovation patterns that would help our clients to navigate challenges better? And are these results surprising? And the answer is there are several patterns and some genuinely, I would say, shocking behaviors. In fact, we found 7 surprising secrets. Today's conversation is about the first one, that many organizations embark on their innovation efforts without a clear strategy. So innovation management has matured from intuition to science. We now have a decade of global data from 10,000 plus organizations, and the patterns are clear. And the first surprise is that nearly half of organizations are investing heavily without a strategic destination. Just call out one thing. I'll just put up on the slide the 7 secrets. There are 7 webinars, including the one today. We'll give you more information on this, but please take note and sign up for them all. Each of the partners of Innovation 360 are involved in this initiative, and you can see players from all over the world, the Middle East, from Jordan, from Australia, from Sweden, from Canada, amongst other places. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. There are a number of other initiatives, other secrets that we'll be talking about over the course of the coming year. So, Luis, let's start with some data. If we look at the InnoSurvey data, what do we see?
Well, I mean, we started looking at the InnoSurvey data, and we looked at a question in particular, which is, does the organization set innovation goals and work systematically to achieve those goals? So, in other words, are they really planning and preparing, or are they just, getting some of that innovation by chance? And it's quite interesting to see the results, because what we've learned is that many actually score very poorly, and they were lacking innovation metrics and specific goals. They also had a very weak or poorly communicated leadership vision. And we found that when leadership vision was unclear, teams may be experimenting, but they were actually lacking alignment. So a core finding of the data was that only 55% of the organizations affirmed that they had innovation goals, and they were working systematically toward them. And 75% claimed to make substantial innovation efforts, but that 25 percentage point gap represents today billions of dollars in unfocused R&D spending globally. So having said that, we do observe that innovation ambition in most organizations exists, and whether you're in a small or a large organization of every single size, And whether you are in a regional or a local organization, so this applies to global organizations, different sectors and segments, whether you're in a manufacturer or hospital system or a financial institution, you name it. The organizations want to succeed. But embarking without a roadmap means that, pursuing that innovation activity is lacking a systematic way to approach it. And by means of that, not having, setting innovation goals and then not having a roadmap to execute that plan. So they're lacking that discipline.
So think about it for a minute. Pretty close to half of organizations don't have innovation goals when they embark on their programs. That's perhaps not a secret to many, but it's certainly a surprising and I would say shocking observation. And so the question is, if it's not the creativity, then what are the things? What are the symptoms that you can look at that indicate an organization is challenged in this way? Luis, give us a heads up on that.
So, well, there are, Jerry. So we can often see several indicators that organizations are pursuing innovation and they're having these activities, but are lacking the systematic goals and the roadmap discipline. So there's six very common indicators that can be drawn from the data and the observation coming from the InnoSurvey. So it can be the absence of innovation goals. This is really the anchor indicator. So the clue and this is the clue that we need to actually probe deeper, and that's how we did a bit of the work. Then we see that there's weak innovation measurement. So pretty much organizations don't have goals and they're not measuring towards achieving that innovation. We see that there's unclear innovation leadership and direction. So that means there's lack, let's say, of alignment between the leaders of the organization and the people that are executing within that organization. We'd see low innovation priority in the leadership agenda. I would say that they're very focused on the very short term, and so leaders in that organization are very focused on delivering just the quarterly quota results. We see weak portfolio decision discipline, and then finally, there's innovation that where activity does exist, but it's lacking the strategic connections through the whole organization. So you see these pockets, of activity happening, but they're not connected to the rest of the organization.
So here's where the data
We
that
do
we
have a few questions here in the chat.
sure go for it.
I did answer one of them. We do have two other here, so I read them loud, and Louis or Jerry, you can pick it up here. We have one here: in situation where effectively embarking without a map, how do you distinguish between productive exploration and strategic drift?
That's a wonderful question, Marwan. I think we're going to be touching on that in a few minutes. But I think I don't know if you, Jerry, do you wanna take that one, or should we
Um,
wait?
yeah, let's wait. So we'll talk a little bit about it in terms of
Yeah.
the diagnostic, but yeah.
Then we have another question: driving innovation without a roadmap. How important does the map review cycle and the speed of reaction become?
Yep. We're going to be touching on that answer as well.
All right, good. Let's go ahead. Thanks for great questions.
So here's where the data comes in. So a number of practitioners often use their observations and experience, both very important things. But what we do is we add another element to it, which is the data. And the data is driven by our InnoSurvey, diagnostic, and other factors. And so we take those six indicators and we then use those to identify, as we're working with a client, where they stand and whether or not there are things that are proof points in terms of the things that are not operating the way they are. And so this is really about the roadmap and the importance of it. So what it does is it enables a view of organizations and to the extent that they're goal driven, in very simple terms. So So perhaps maybe Luis, if you could pick a couple or one or two of these and just talk about an example and sort of how it applies back to the diagnostic, that would be helpful, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think some of the stories about organizations that we've seen within Innovation 360 is going to actually help a lot. So just give you some examples to illustrate this. Years back, there was this big automaker that aligned, and they were announcing before they really got the whole organization aligned. And so there was glowing press releases about this fantastic EV division that they were starting up, and the stock the stock market was just really applauding the efforts that this organization was doing. And so there was just one little tiny problem to it, was that nobody told engineering, marketing, and manufacturing to actually work together. So this might be answering Marwan's question about if you have these pockets of innovation and there's strategic fit to it, or drift. If you're not connecting and telling people to work together, there's no cross-functional task force and there's no shared big idea, and you're missing on the part of scenario planning, then you're probably going to be collapsing throughout the cycle. What happened with this particular organization was that the charging partnerships where you're going to be connecting your EV, they actually collapsed, and so timeless slipped, and competitors with less boss came into the market and they won. So they were first to enter the market, and somebody else took the game. So this example really showcases, two of the points that we made earlier. There's weak leadership and direction, as the teams were not connected towards the same goal. And while there was some execution at a degree, for those innovation activities, since you're lacking this connection, then to the strategic alignment, then you're failing by nature. I'll give you one other example, which is none that I've ever, personally experienced in my life. So whatever you read from this example, don't go into my LinkedIn and think, oh, this is the organization that Luis was talking about. So there's this pharma company that scouted everything, ceased nothing. So we had a situation where the pipeline was running dry, key patents were expiring, so revenue projections were falling off a cliff. And so regional teams were doing the work. They started scouting molecules to see and mapping targets to try and license, bring this as license opportunities and licensing opportunities to the table. Every single time that a deal reached the global business development teams, the answer was the same. No, it's off strategy. So there was with this particular molecule that stood out, and regional scouts flagged it early, and they built the case. They pushed it up the corporate ladder. Headquarters again turned it down. Competitor didn't hesitate, in a few months after they acquired the product. That molecule today is projected to reach $4 billion in peak sales, $4 billion in peak sales in the next coming years. So this is demonstrating a problem that it wasn't lack of innovation activity, to Marwan's point. So teams were scouting and evaluating. You have these pockets; they're finding real opportunities. But the problem was the weak portfolio decisions discipline. So there's no structured rules for making a decision of go no go. There's no shared strategic priorities that are connecting to those regional intelligence to global action. And yeah, you have innovation that is existing, but it feels completely disconnected from the rest of the company strategy. So, a competitor with a better alignment just walked away with a huge prize.
So remember that this is data that's self-reported from organizations, so it's factual, and it's confirmed through work that we do with the clients. And it's important to think about the innovation in the context of a broader corporate program as well as individual initiatives. So there's often a break in the communication from the top of the house to the broader organization, and so what happens is if we take a look at the leadership direction, the leadership themselves may be very clear on where it is they're trying to pursue, gain growth or expansion, but they haven't communicated that well to the broader organization. And I've definitely seen that on numerous occasions, and often the executive will say, "Well, I told them, once." And so I think it's really important that the organizations take and embrace the need to expand and understand the nature of their objectives from a strategic perspective across the enterprise. And whether it's a small initiative or a big one, and particularly if it's a big one, that's important that everybody understands where the organization is going, why it's a priority, and what the decision process is in order to move forward. And that's what this diagnostic does. Gives us clear data around whether all the indicators are flashing, and certainly the first one around the absence of goals is a one we call it an anchor, which sort of just says there's an issue here, and the others give us some more insight into where that issue is, and it could be all things, or it could be just one. So one of the things that is very clear, though, is that the planning process is really, really important. And so, Luis, I recall you telling me of a case of yours, so you probably can find it on your LinkedIn from 2020 that really illustrates the need for thoughtful planning. Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, 2020. What can I tell you about that one? Well, we all went through it, right? So when the COVID pandemic hit, there was this major hospital group that they did what seemed to be very obvious. So they were rapidly adopting, telemedicine services and creating a lot of flexibility around their system. So patient access was improved. They started providing virtual consultations, and so that way they were able to cope with the situation. And then all of a sudden, you have leaders again celebrating in the boardrooms and their agility and that flexibility of creating that speed to and reaction to it. When you dug deeper, what we found was that doctors were really struggling with unfamiliar software interfaces. And while there was, simultaneously managing the crisis with loads of patients that they were receiving, there was data security protocols that were varying by department. So you can imagine when you're talking about, compliance records and patient records. You're talking about very sensitive data. So can you imagine about that particular situation? And then, first, patients, of course, were very happy because they got the speed into their treatment rooms and stuff, and so you could see that there were net promoting scores spiking at the initial phase, but then they started declining, and then unfortunately the initiative completely failed, and it failed to grasp that robust transformations require a systematic approach. So it's not just a quick fix. And so it's something that we call within Innovation 360 scenario planning. And it's very linked also to a tool that we call the 5A process. It's where you identify, incubate, intensify, and then iterate. I'm sorry, I missed one, and then institutionalize the effort. So this particular case about hospital system highlights that there's a need to, whenever you're evolving, you also have to be communicating with your teams. And most importantly, you have to be communicating the why is it that you're doing and the what and how you're going to be rolling it out. So technification will not immediately translate into transformation. That's something that teams need to understand. And it's worth noting that COVID itself didn't really create innovation problems for each one of the different industries. I think we all saw how the whole stock market behaved. What it actually did, it only exposed the problems that organizations had. Organizations that had invested in scenario planning heavily, they were capable to, and they had this capability assessments. They were and the cross-functional work. They were able to really adapt very quickly within weeks and months of the whole pandemic striking. But the rest of organizations are still catching up. So I don't know if you have the same feeling or not, and our audience might have it. But at least the sense of feeling that I have is, what did we learn from the whole pandemic? And I'm still seeing that there's a lot of organizations that learned absolutely nothing. Going back to the same patterns that we were doing before. So whether you were working in the automotive industry or the healthcare industry or financial services back in 2020, you cannot say that they didn't have very smart people working there. It's very smart people that are working there. They have vast resources and they really have genuine ambition. But they're still stumbling with the same problem, and that's because they're going into this unmapped territories, and they're not building those plans to get them prepared and then beating and reacting on time.
So one important thing I think to add to that, because I'm aware, or I think I'm aware of the fact that health systems across the world had actually done catastrophe planning for health events in different parts of the world, including the U.S. and other places, and they had a scenario plan, they had a plan, and it was quite detailed, and they'd gone through it a few months before the actual pandemic hit, just because that was as a course of business. What they didn't do was follow it. And so I think having the plan and going through the process is critical. Using the plan is also critical. And so sometimes we take a look at a lot of organizations buy methodologies and then they don't actually use them, or they use them to get tick the box and then they don't move forward with it. So in this case, scenario planning and stuff, you can do very sophisticated planning, but it's only helpful when you actually execute it. Just a thought, just from having my head beaten in from working with clients on these things. Telling They call that telling the client their baby's ugly, which is not good. Um, so so there's one little thing that you've probably heard about, Luis, and that's artificial intelligence. And maybe not. Who knows? Because everybody has, I'm sure. So an artificial intelligence and the strategy around it are all the rage today. Everybody's talking about it. So how do you apply the learning that you're talking about to the trials and tribulations now surrounding the artificial intelligence boom?
Uh, uh, it's deja vu again. Jerry, I'm sorry to say it. And people that are close to me, they know I'm a nerd, completely nerd about AI, and I'm a fan about it, and I use it a lot, and I'm building agentic systems. But what I'm seeing, what I'm working right now with some organizations, is that they're deploying the AI agents without really answering a fundamental question, and they're not asking what do we want this intelligence to achieve for us. They're just deploying it, because they want to automate processes, but they're not really spending the time to answer that question. And so just as organizations in the 2000s, where there was a huge investment for digital transformation, you saw this often with no, they didn't really understand what they were really transforming, and where they were heading towards. So it's the same pattern now with AI. So companies are rushing things just to automate it and fixing the how, but they're very clear, they're without being very clear on the why they're doing it. And so AI is becoming just a solution for problems, and that's it. So that's leading just to automate the wrong places, and you're automating for incremental processes and missing out the transformative processes that this particular technology could bring.
With
So I bet you
one
see,
question here,
I guess.
which is it's a very short answer from my side, but I would like to elaborate on that and hand it over to Jerry and Louis as well, because the question is good, but the answer is very boring. Do you think AI will be the ultimate solution? And my simple answer is no, not even close. But it might deserve at least a minute because the question is good. And from my perspective, and I've been working with AI since early 90s with neural networks. I did my own neural networks, and I'm still very engaged in creating models with large language models. So I would consider myself as rather deep from a technology point of view. And the first thing is that AI doesn't have a conscience. It's not creative. It's just trained on specific material, and then you use instructions to make sure that the prompts is generating something that is possible to tolerate for the user. And that means that you can do a lot of automations, you can do a lot of manual work, but you cannot replace creativity and you cannot replace human conscious and empathic relationships and so forth. So that's my take on it. But perhaps Louise and Jerry would like to fill in, and then we continue because it would drift away otherwise from the topic. But I think it was a good question.
It's a great question, actually. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the ultimate solution. I think we this question was asked to me maybe 10 years ago, and my answer was this is when we started at Innova Salud investing in AI. So back, 2015. My answer was, I think if the human beings, we take it right, we're in the midst of a new renaissance period. But we really need to make sure that we're looking at what makes us different, and that's the part of empathic behavior. And I'll leave it to that because otherwise I'll drift.
So two points. One, when I was a little short, it was a long time ago, consultant and looking up to the big guys. I used to be in awe of, and still am actually, of some of the people and their ability to communicate and to take large amounts of information and data and come up with conclusions that weren't obvious and like that. And I don't believe that AI is ever going to replace that. It's an interpretation that's necessary. It's at least not now, anyways. Can't tell the politics of the situation or the personalities or whatever. There's a lot of dynamics that come from being able to use the information. Does it help the process of analysis and identifying data? Of course it does. With the proviso that you have to make sure the data you're getting is accurate and comes from somewhere that you can justify or prove. But I don't think that, at least in the short term, at least in my career and yours probably, that it will be the issue. The issue will be people who adopt these new tools without taking into account the realities of how decisions need to be made and the amount of input that has to come from individuals. The other thing, which actually I just put a LinkedIn post out about the last week or so, there is a discernible pattern of the world in terms of how it embraces new technologies and new ideas. And the pattern's the same every single time. So some of you may have not have been around in the re-engineering time or quality assurance time or whatever, but the response, the way the organizations deal with it, how it gets deployed, the resistance that happens, the stories of Armageddon, all those sort of things are all very common stories. And not to suggest you don't need to take it seriously, but the world responds to these things in the same way regularly. And the implications of that in terms of how organizations are going to proceed forward are the same. So I just want to plant that. And I'll draw you to my LinkedIn profile. Take a look at the article. But it's an interesting thing to have in terms of your assessment of AI. AI is a new thing. It's a new technology. It's very powerful. It does all kinds of interesting things, but it isn't the world-ending kind of thing, which is sometimes how it's presented. I don't think. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but that is my perspective. So, Luis, I'm sure that we go back to the issue around sort of implementation and putting the plans in place and stuff. And I'm sure you have examples of this all the time.
Yeah.
Tell me about one.
So there's many ways that agentic AI has been adopted and institutionalized as part of workflows and in different organizations. I'll give you an example that is close to my heart in terms of the insurance field in Mexico. And so you have company A, which currently is deploying AI to automate claims, and then you have company B that is deploying the same technology to reduce time resolution by 50% of those claims. So if you read them, it seems to be similar, but they're similar concepts, but they're not. And in addition to it, if you dive deeper, again, the actual problem that they should be scoping is that the government right now in Mexico enforced the VAT that it's imputable to the consumer. In other words, the patient. So combined with the medical inflation, that means the policy premiums are roughly being increased this year by 40%. I'll say it again, it's 40% increase on your insurance policy premium, right? So just to give you, I mean, if we were in Venezuela or Argentina, 40% might not be, something where you would be scared about. But in Mexico, similar to the US and other economies, our prices roughly increased by 5 to 7%. So 40%, it's a huge number. The thing is that the company should be proactively restructuring their specialty coverage in order to actually, try and reduce this impact and the premiums to it. And most of them are doing it reactively without actually building a roadmap for how biologic therapies, innovative advanced therapies, patient access, and cost containment should strategically coexist in the market. So it's a whole, automaker story just replaced in healthcare. So to make it a bit more interesting and looking at a larger ecosystem, the pharma companies really haven't mapped out what does this mean for them as an impact. This is a 3-4 million live impact where they could these lives could be losing coverage in the private market. That's around 30% of the current lives in the private market. So it's going to be a huge impact for them. But they really haven't discussed and they really haven't planned a scenario for it. So if you link this example to the seven secrets, it's demonstrating that companies that are embarking without a roadmap, they do have innovation existing as part of their culture, but it's not being managed strategically as a priority for them. And so this is leading for innovation programs without goals and opportunistic experimentation and to be executed in the wrong place. So that it's showcasing this same level of problems that we've been discussing. And the example of the insurance companies, if you take that from the data of the seven secrets, which I haven't yet done the analysis, but we can bring it, and then think about this, the how part of it. What we're gonna for sure see is organizations that are embarking without this roadmap. They're lacking, and for sure they're lacking structured decision rules. And they're going to be expressing symptoms like projects continuing without experimentation or evaluation. And they're going to be showcasing weak prioritization across the board and resource diffusion. So I wouldn't be surprised if when we do the analysis, the outcome is similar to what we've discussed. And how the big question that I still get is how can we help organizations that are not measuring these goals, that they cannot be operationalized and learning, and taking the learnings from this breaking loops. How can we help those organizations transform and be a bit different? So that's a big question that I still have, Jerry.
Cool. So let me summarize. It was a long conversation about AI there. AI is today's digital transformation. I'll add my little piece. It is a significant change as we've experienced over decades, different kinds of change. But we know from the data and experience that if organizations deploy it with a clear innovation roadmap, they'll be more likely to succeed than those who don't, and they'll be more likely to meet their transformation goals. The ones who deploy AI without a map will not. And perhaps at best, they'll automate some broken journeys. The Mexico insurance case shows that that is happening now in healthcare in Mexico, and I'm sure we can extrapolate this to many markets and industries around the world. Okay, so I think we made a good case for why we need a roadmap. And we have a tool within the Innovation 360 toolkit called Scenarios 360 that captures it all. Other tools exist within innovation services. So InnoSurvey, we've talked about Pestlet for market research, and Scenarios 360, as I just said. And the data proves that it works. So what do organizations need to do, and how do they do it, Luis?
The common thread, for failure is that organizations are innovating from their capabilities outward instead of from the customer futures inward. So you are all familiar with the Harvard Canon stories where you have the camera company that asked, how do we protect film revenue? Instead of how might we capture memories, how our customers are going to be capturing memories in 2010, or the big phone company that asked, how do we build better hardware, instead of how might mobile communication is going to evolve for people over time. So I think getting the strategy and goal is right, and it's critical. The why in that regard, at the core of each one of organizations' innovation agenda should be should give you a very clear view of the future and the potential scenarios that might be encountered. So it's those scenarios, they don't need to come with certainty, but there needs to be an agenda that establishes a point of focus, for all those innovation efforts. So scenario planning is really about a process of analyzing possible future events and consider those alternative, possibilities and outcomes. It's not designed to show one picture of the future or even just, a certain picture of that future. At least I've been in organizations that I've been working, for years and years on building these long range plans, and then you become liable because you proposed a target, and then the organization comes back and says, "Oh, but you said this, 5 years ago and this is how you build your plan." So how we need to think about those scenario plans is that it's presenting alternative future developments, not to it's only helping you to get your thinking, but it should be consequently a range of possible future outcomes that must be considered, not just one. So forces management. So I think that the part is, how do you force that aspect of managing to think outside of the box and include more comprehensive thinking into the mix. And I know thinking outside of the box is really a buzzword, and sometimes it becomes just kind of mumbo jumbo in the hallway of organizations. But thinking outside of the box needs to be meant. So organizations that are using the box to figure out their constraints, it would be great if they were able to really rethink of the box as assumptions for what customers will always want. So it's not about the constraints of the company, but it's really about how do you change the assumptions of your customer. So let me clarify this concept from the examples above. So thinking about the film company, inside the box would be, because customers will always want faster film processing, right? Now, outside of the box would be, customers want to preserve and share memories. The medium or the channel is negotiable.
Cool. So you'll see on the screen the scenario planning mapping process. And there's 4 steps. And Luis is going to tell us more.
So, scenario planning was designed to support and improve decision making by allowing those deep considerations and outcomes and their implications to the organization, right? So it really enables a dynamic response to an unknown future, and it helps blend the short, the medium, and the long-term actions into a comprehensive agenda. It assists with thinking in advance about the many ways of the future and how this future may unfold, and it also considers the responses of your company as the future becomes a reality. Now, to do this formally, in scenario planning process, the work it begins by scanning the current reality. So project and start projecting the forecast and the influence and the forces that are both internal and external factors that are producing this set of plausible potential futures. This will help to really understand how various situations will be affecting our business. Now, 3 essential customer questions that you need to make are: who is your customer today? Not your buyer. So the person whose life you are transforming, that's the question that you need to ask. What forces are really shaping the world? And what job are they hiring your innovations to deliver? So these 3 questions are critical. And then once you have those questions answered, then you can start moving down the road, which is then develop the series of initiatives and projects and the policies and your tactics that may help you support a preferred scenario, a component of that scenario, or just building those multiple scenarios. So it'll give you a full, let's say, picture of that. So, and then, you'll have 4 critical steps that you need to be thinking about. So assessing the current state. So in terms of your capability and plans, and this is where InnoSurvey becomes a real critical tool. Look for weaknesses and strengths. Look for the warning signs and gather the insights from the stakeholders. Include your external stakeholders into your view, and lay out the issues and gather opinions to prioritize corrective actions. The second point is scan your marketplace and looking about the key drivers of that marketplace. Gather the intelligence about the future and define the critical uncertainties. You can use PESLED, which is the short acronym for political, economic, social, technological, legal, environment, and demographic changes. Then start constructing and visualizing, those potential future scenarios and combine them and develop them for a view of the future. So describe the alternative possibilities in those scenarios and describe a view of that future, against those scenarios. And then you start formalizing your plan, determining the steps to get to the preferred future state. Finalize the policy and strategy. So you start setting smart goals and allocate resources to that. And then organizations that are more successful don't draft goals just by saying, be more innovative. So they're very specific, they're very intentional. They go in and do it very clearly. 30% of the revenue from products are launched in the last 3 years. So, and they allocate the resources to those three horizons. They make a commitment in terms of investment. So Scenarios 360 is a tool that you can take online and use it for your scenario planning tool. It's built upon the world-class techniques that are out there, and it's AI assisted, and enabled, so it can help you build in terms of those analysis and your Padlet, and it will help you elaborate on your unique organization possibilities across the board.
So, coming soon, there will be some cool new functionality with Padlet in particular, and I won't say, but let's just call that a tease. But the existing Padlet and the existing Scenarios 360 are quite powerful tools and have AI enablement in terms of moving data around and stuff like that. They're very, very cool and build substantive plans that actually you push a button at the end and it produces your document, which is very, very cool. So to recap what Luis said, so when you're drawing your map, you need to start from the futures, customer futures inward, not capabilities outward. And the starting point is the three questions. Number two, use Padlet to improve or build understanding and drive scenario planning to stress test your assumptions. Number three, you connect your scenarios with SMART goals. And number four, you give teams explicit permission zones to innovate. So we want to make sure that people understand that they can think outside the box, there's process to discussing things as they come up, but it's about having the permission to actually do those things as the process goes forward. And the tools exist, and the data proves that they work. So, what does the future look like, and what are leading organizations doing to address what is clearly a very complex and uncertain landscape?
I think it's a great question, Jerry. So I think there's probably 5 points that I would say. So organizations in the future is going to be looking like organizations are measuring more before they move. So leading organizations are not assuming, and they want to know where they're standing and how to measure their innovation capability. So tools like InnoSurvey will be providing a comprehensive data-driven baseline across dozens of innovation dimensions, and it's going to be helping organizations build the future and on foundations that they haven't yet to test. Organizations are going to be planning for multiple futures, not just one forecast, hopefully, after this conversation. So the best organizations aren't predicting that they're really getting themselves prepared. And the Scenario 360s will allow them to build 4 or 5 potential futures and stress test them, against those possibilities. Shell has done this for decades. The UK government has used foresight frameworks for decades as well. So this is a proven methodology, and it's accessible to any organization. Three, I do believe that there's going to be organizations that are going to be aligning the how and the why a bit more. So the biggest failure is not having ambition. So it's really what we're seeing from the data is that organizations do have ambition, and it often scores high. So everybody wants to do better. But the failure isn't really translating that strategic intent into operational execution. So leading organizations will be creating cross-functional innovation task forces and defining those shared big ideas and cascading them across the organization. I think that will answer a bit of Marwan's question. They use AI as a strategic accelerator and not just a cost-cutting tool. So I think AI will be definitely adopted into something that will become more of an accelerator. And organizations getting it right are going to be the ones that are asking what customers, future will this be enabled by using AI, not just what process they're automating and where they're saving some money. So I think we have our tools within Innovation 360 from the likes of Agent 360 or the Padlet with scenarios. So we have AI-powered layers within Innovation 360 platforms. But this is how AI should be helping to serve your innovation strategy and not to replace it. Then finally, I think the one of the aspects that I wish organizations would actually take and do different is, build the muscle before the crisis. So if there's anything that we have to learn from the 2020 pandemic, is that, organizations that had the scenario planning and discipline and were able to adapt in weeks, the ones that didn't have them, they're still catching up 6 years afterwards. So leading organizations that practice this innovation readiness, um, they train like athletes. They're going to be consistent in terms of their delivery, and they're going to be able to win in that competition.
So we're getting close to the end. So we're going to ask you if you have any questions, and we probably have time for one or two. But while you're doing that, two things. One is we have some questions for you, and you'll see them on the slide. And two, perhaps in the background, as you think about what your questions are, Luis, maybe you have some final advice for today's innovation leaders.
Yeah. So my first and foremost thought is stop confusing motion with progress. We're in the business of seeing people busy the whole time, and organizations that are spending heavily on innovation, if you cannot articulate what success looks like in very measurable terms, you're in the 45% of the organizations. Just accept it, live with it, diagnose it, and then do a plan to fix it. So there's no shame in discovering that you've been sailing without a compass. It's perfectly fine. 1 in every 2 does it, so it's fine. But the shame is in continuing to sail without that compass. I think once you know this, you have to fix it. Second, I would say it's start from the customer's future, not your own. This is where I see most of organizations getting it wrong. Every failure we discussed today had one thing in common. They innovated from the capabilities outward instead of the customer's world inward. And Tesla can actually help you get yourself into that customer's eyes and shoes. So ask yourself what forces are really shaping their world, not your company's world. We use this exercise very often in different organizations, but we use it with the lens always of the organization. Use it with the lens of the customer. And then thirdly, draw a map, today. If you're thinking about the next quarter or the next budget cycle, we complain about governments that they're very, let's say, limited in terms of their timeline, and they're focused only in a 4-year period or 6-year period. But organizations, they're focused on getting Wall Street and the markets right, in a quarter cycle. So the best time to draw an innovation map was 10 years ago. Your second best chance is right now.
So time for questions. Magnus, anything in the chat?
So yeah, we have a few appreciate optimism and other good things here. And we have also maybe something that could be worth reflecting on. A lot of input is pretty good, but if I should pick one here, because we only have 2 more minutes, I would say that Tord here is writing, in my experience, Levers believes that lab exist and are being used, but what we measure and analyze using them or are using them for things that aren't customer focused and certainly not for exploration and learning intentionally. It's basically he's claiming based on his experience, the lab is just sugarcoating. So, maybe that's worth reflecting on. I agree. Not in every case, but in some cases. But that might be something to reflect on and link that to goals, maybe as an end punch.
Luis?
I see a comment from I see a comment from Darren as well. I think the part of communication, and I'm just looking at that is like, Darren, I sped up, because of the time and everything. We didn't have a chance to go in, but there's definitely the piece of communication that will be critical. I'm sure that there's going to be in the other series I'm sure we're going to be touching on that particular point, but I'll leave that to Jerry to comment on the next series because communication is critical across the organization. Yeah.
Okay. So to bring this to a close, you've heard it. Innovation failure is less about the effort and more about the navigation system. 45% of organizations are sailing without a map. Don't you be one of them. So thanks, Luis, for chatting with me. And this wraps up our episode 1 of our 7 Secrets of Innovation series. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we look forward to hearing on your thoughts from you. There's contact information on the screen if you wanted to reach out. The links also are in the chat to sign up for upcoming sessions. There are 6 more. The next one is on April the 24th. Marwan, April 21st, excuse me, 821, with Marwan Atta, one of our partners from Jordan, as the expert speaker, and I will be doing the interviewing for that one as well. So if there are any other questions, as I said, feel free to reach out directly. You've got the contact information there. So all of you, please stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at our next episode on April the 21st with Marwan Atta. In that session, we're going to dig into another surprising pattern, that is operating with a competitive blind spot. And what that means is not knowing about your customers, or excuse me, your clients, operating in a way that's sort of inconsistent with perhaps what the market is saying about products and things. Mara will have lots more about that. We've had some good conversations so far, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. I hope you are too. Please sign up for the next one and perhaps sign up for all 7. They're all up on the Innovation Hub where you have the link for that. So we'll see you all then. Thank you very much for your care and attention and your good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.